All right, you maggots, listen up. Uh, you notice there's a tube here. This is probably a 6SN7, which is an oscillator tube. It's used in audio oscillators and some lower frequency RF generators. Now, I am both a tube and a transistor guy, an IC guy. I know microprocessors. My stumbling point is I can't learn code from Morse code because I can't process it fast enough. Uh, The other thing, I have real trouble with programming. I did basic programming. I used a compiler. I worked around the fact that I couldn't program. There's a certain skill set, and you got to want to do it. But what I want to talk about today is which amplifier is better, a tube or a transistor. Now, the guys on YouTube that are spouting back and forth, they're too effing old to make any kind of decision. When you're that old, your hearing is gone. I don't care who you are. A certain percentage of your hearing is gone. And they'll say, thicker wires on the speakers give you a different sound. Yes. If you got really deep bass notes and a really large speakers, the amount of current to move that speaker coil in that woofer is immense. So if you use too thin a wire, you won't get the really deep bass response. But you have to listen to the song with the big wires, calibrate your brain, and then switch to the smaller wires. Or use an A/B switch. And yes, you can hear the difference. But I want to tell you something. I had a friend. He built these giant speakers. When he first fired them up, they kept blowing the fuses. And one of the engineering guys that sold him the speakers, figured out that he was operating the speakers without them being in the enclosure. And the impedance of the speaker is different without any back pressure. I hope you follow that. And that guy, he just died last year. He had one record, Edgar Winter Group's Frankenstein. And he constantly played that. He had a Sony deck, a really expensive Sony deck. Representatives would come from the company and help him out with that deck. He had a really good setup. He could crack the wall in the cellar, the plaster wall or the sheetrock wall. He could put a crack in it. He could give you a stomach ache. He could give you a headache. You almost felt like your sinuses are going to bleed. But he didn't really like music. It was all about the specifications. And him and then this other guy, they'd come over to my house, and I'd have my headphones on, and I'd be reading a book and watching television at the same time. And they'd come over, and they'd start on me. The one little guy, oh man, what an ugly person. But anyway, physically ugly, repulsive ugly. And he would go on every time he was over at my house that my cassette deck was too fast or too slow at the time, had a synchronous motor in it. I tested it. It was his deck. He had a cheap piece of shit deck. Well, anyway, they're spec guys. This is better than that. This is better than that. I bought my player, my radio, my originally record. I enjoyed music. That was one of my escapes. It still is to this day. It's an escape. I go play music every day, certain amount of hours. I play some type of music. I put my earbuds in. I'm happy with that. So you say, well, what's really better, transistors or tubes? Okay, let's go with some stories. First of all, Queen. You've heard of Queen, and one of their songs is a lot of fuzz, like that. What that is the guy was walking along, and he saw, I guess, a stereo in the dumpster. He pulled it out, and it was old germanium transistors. And he took it home, and he figured out how to get it working. And he noticed when he put a signal in from his guitar amp, it went into heavy distortion. All the transistors through the amplifier basically were clipping very easily. So he got this, what do they call that? The thing that, oh, now I'm going to see. See, this is what happens when you get older. A kazoo, okay? It's a pipe. You go through it. It's got a piece of wax paper on a little bowl, and it razzes with each note, and that's the kazoo sound. And a lot of you can do a kazoo sound many different ways. But Queen did it by pulling a transistor amplifier out of one of the guys pulled a transistor amplifier out of the dumpster, and he realized he could get it to clip. He could get the whole amplifier to clip very easily, and it produced that kazoo sound. And they went into recording, and it was his favorite. One of his, I won't say it was a pedal. He made it himself. He got that sound. So if you've listened to Queen and you hear that the next time you hear that kazoo sound, that's that amplifier. Now that was a transistor amplifier. When transistor amplifiers first come out, they use germanium transistors. Now in a transistor, when they first come out, there was a very narrow region. You got to look at the curve. Every transistor's got a curve, and you operate within this certain part of the curve in order to get a sine wave out. Now, if you overdrive the input of the transistor, the sine wave will get clipped at the top, or it'll get clipped at the bottom, depending on what the hell's going on with your bias, your volt input bias. So when transistors first come out, they were very prone to distortion, harmonic distortion. And as time went on, they started using FETs, and you start doing all types of things. All right, so here we take the perfect tube amplifier and the perfect transistor amplifier, and we play music through it. And somebody will notice there's a difference. Absolutely. A transistor circuit is more brash. It sounds more like brass. And the reason is, I won't say it follows the waveform more religiously, but it does it better than the tube amp. A lot of tube amps have transformers in there. And anytime you put a sine wave, or not a sine wave, a waveform that's not a sine wave through a transformer, it gets rounded off. All those little sharp little edges that would make a kazoo sound get rounded off. So it's got a more pleasing sound to people with older ears. See, as your hearing gets older, you don't like sharp sounds. So you're more likely to say, that amplifier, that tube amplifier, that sounds more soothing. They have all these different words for it. It's rounding off the waveforms. Now, a transistor amplifier, it might have overshoot on the note. It might have harmonic distortion over a certain range. And both amplifiers, playing Sinatra, playing certain music, they're both perfect. Right? You probably won't notice the difference. It's when you get into rock or disco and you hear the cymbals and you have a transistor amplifier and you, like, we'll take Blondie music. That cymbals in there have a distinctive sound to them. The initial hit, the ringing, and another little transient noises off the cymbals. It almost sounds like in the song Atomic, when I first heard it on a good stereo, it sounded like the cymbals were sand in a ball, in one of those toy balls. And I didn't realize it was the cymbals because I had bought a good stereo amplifier. It was transistor, and it was giving me that sound. And then I played it on a tube amp, and the sound changed. All right. Now you can get into arguments for weeks and days with people. Oh, tube amp's better. This special EL40, EL34 tubes, blah blah blah. It's BS. All right, and they'll get all upset. I'm trolling them right now. Okay, I'm trolling them. People that really like music, they need a certain level of stereo, and then they're into the music. They don't think about, well, that bass should be a lot deeper. They're into the sound, the music, the content, and they're absolutely happy. And then they'll have one of their friends, like I had, come over. Oh, I think that song should have so much more bass than that. See, that's what they're into. More bass. They want the car to be faster, more horsepower, more of that. See, I buy a car, when I had a car, to get me from point A to point B. I had to have a pretty good stereo in it. So when I got stuck in traffic, I could listen to my tunes. Other people have to have special speakers, and I had good speakers in my cars. I put them in myself. You get to a certain level, and it's good enough. But other people, oh, I have to put a kicker amp in the trunk, and they're hearing those guys. They can't tell you about any stereo being good. Anyone that drives around with that bass booster in their trunk, their hearing is real bad. Just oh, I can hear the difference between the thicker and thinner wires. I bet you can, because your high end of your music in your ears is gone. When I was in Rets, I was moving a frequency generator up and down, and there was this kid. I could tell you his name, but I won't. He played bass guitar. He couldn't hear the signal generator when it went above 10,000 cycles. And then I showed him another thing. Back in the old days, quarters would ring. You put two quarters on the end of your fingertips and you hit them together. And he could only hear when the quarters hit. He couldn't hear the ringing of the two quarters. And I put it right up to each ear, and I did it. He says, I can't hear that. He says, I can hear the two coins hitting, but not the ringing. So I said, what do you do? And he said, I play bass guitar. And he stood down there in front of the bass guitar speaker as he's playing. So it's the same thing as the guys riding around with these kickers in the car. They're not going to be able to hear frequencies over 10,000 after a while. And that's why whenever I turn on a YouTube video and I see guys over 50 years old telling you about which stereos are better and tubes, he has bad hearing to start with. Did he get certified with a hearing test? Is he a teenager? Can he tell difference in notes? You don't know that. You're listening to some guy rant, and I rant, but basically you can test anything I tell you. With a person saying this amplifier is better than that amplifier, how do you test that? You have to buy both amplifiers, and then you find out the guy's got a hearing loss. But I just wanted to step throw my hat in the ring, and I'll tell you, any old man that tells you which amplifier is better, don't listen to them. Oh, the old Sansuis, they were really good. Yeah, they were really good in their day, but don't fix the radio in it. What do you want to listen to? Oldies on that thing? People that like music, it's amazing what they'll listen to, because they like the music, they like the content, they like the story, they like to change it, like Beatles songs have several changes throughout the song. That's what they want to hear. Other people, it's all about specifications and how loud they can crank that sucker up. And I told you, a friend of mine, he was building speaker systems in there. He owned one record, Edgar Winter Groups, and then when you go over there, it's like he wanted to crank that stereo up again. I said, you showed me this like 5 times. He'd still put it on, still crank it up, give me a stomach ache with it. And then, the other thing too, when he cranked it up real loud, the lights in the room went to the music, because that's how much current the amplifier was pulling. So him and another guy ran another set of wires from the box, from the outlet box where it comes into the house. They ran it over to the outlet, and he put a special outlet in with heavy amperage, and you could still see the lights move a little bit to the music. That's how loud he was turning that thing up. See, a couple times I just would walk out through his cellar into the garage and outside, and my ears would be hissing and ringing, like after you run a little gasoline engine, RC car or whatever. After you're done, your ears are like doing this. That's damage. That's hearing loss damage. And you get that frying bacon when you get older, and you won't like it. But I was around all kinds of power tools and machinery, and my hearing's damaged. And I tell people, when they're talking to me, I wave to them. I hold my finger up to my mouth. I'm like, hold on, let me get over there. And I have to have people repeat stuff. I'm here all day by myself. If I put a hearing aid in, all I'm going to hear is the garbage trucks going by the house. And yeah, I should get some type of hearing aid that when I go outside and I see one of my neighbors, I can put it in and I can hear them. But what I do, you know what I do? I make them talk louder, because what they're going to talk to me about is they want something, they want to know something. So why would I buy a $2,000 hearing aid, or maybe 2 of them, put them in my ear so I can hear some guy ask me for help, ask me about neighbors, what they're doing. I don't stand at my windows and watch my neighbors. But I just wanted to tell you two things. When you see an older person telling you about stereos, just delete the video. All right, he's got hearing loss. Uh, the other thing, wires got to be thicker for the speaker. Yeah. Delete that video. If you really like music, the radio or stereo has to be really bad before you won't enjoy the music on it. And I knew a woman, she actually sang opera, and she came into the Radio Shack one time, and she didn't have a lot of money, and she bought first she wanted a really good stereo, but then realized how much they cost. She ended up buying a kid's record player, and she was leaving. I said, that's really a junkie. She says, this is all I can afford. And she says, once the music starts playing, I'll really hear it. I'll really hear the song in my head. I said, oh, okay, that's okay. But I knew right away when I was younger from some of the shenanigans I played, the loud fireworks. You mess your hearing up. I'm going to tell you right now, anytime you run a really loud machinery and your ears hiss after you shut it off, you damaged your ears. One time I did was I was inside of these big boxes, these big wooden boxes, and I was hitting them with a hammer to break them apart. And I'm inside, and one ear felt like it closed up on me. I was like, "What the hell's that?" And I talked to someone. He says, "You're really pushing that eardrum." He says, "You could puncture an eardrum." So anyway, that's when I bought my first pair of headphones. The head mufflers, headphones. The ones that go over your ears for lawn mowing. I still wear them when I mow because I've already got hearing loss. I don't want any more. But I just wanted to jump in, the difference between a good transistor stereo and at some point, they're both going to be good. And don't get in the argument. Don't let them suck you in. And, the tubes this and the tubes that. I'm a tube guy. I'm a transistor guy. I'm an IC guy. I know about microprocessors. And I know at some point that how much do you really need to enjoy the music? Do you really like music? Or you're like, well, this one here is 300 watts per channel. Yeah, 300 watts per channel. The speaker needs 100 just to start moving. See, originally speakers needed about half a watt before they started moving. And at 1 watt, your parents were screaming at you. Now it's you need 300 watts and 100 to get the speaker going. And when you get up to about 150, the parents might start stomping on the floor if you're in the cellar, or yelling down to you, or flicking the lights. I think that's it. All right, that's it.